Coming up next, we're going to talk about the importance of doing what works for you. So the bottom line here, and we're going to talk about this right now, is do what works for you when it comes to managing your ADHD, getting stuff done, okay, building a life that you want, okay, discovering those issues that have been challenging you. Do what works for you. You shouldn't discount certain strategies. And also, you should not feel guilty or shameful that something didn't work for you. I've tried a million things that just didn't work that might work for other people. All right. I move on because that's the way we progress. So when you have ADHD, you need to try just about everything. And that includes non-ADHD advice. And I've seen some criticism of this as well. But once again, I don't want you to discount it because there's little nuggets of information and little strategies that you can pull out from traditional productivity advice and other advice. You know, for example, I've seen people in the ADHD world discount James Clear's Atomic Habits when in fact, implementing little tiny habits in your day is extremely effective, especially for those of us with ADHD. Jeff Hayden, which is an author that I'm learning more about, called The Motivation Myth. But he talks about how motivation comes from doing. And we're looking at it maybe the wrong way, where we might need the motivation to get started, but we actually need to get started to actually get motivation that continues. So think about that for a moment. And we talked about that on a past podcast with Jandra Sutton. So go back and look for that one. And somebody I interviewed for my first book, Overcoming Distractions, was Timothy Pischel. And he wrote The Procrastination Puzzle, or Solving the Procrastination Puzzle. And it's an awesome book, but it really gets inside your head as to the emotional aspects of procrastination. But that book wasn't written for the ADHD community, but you can pull a lot out of it. And it's not a long book. So bottom line, once again, do what works for you. Okay. If you thrive in a coffee shop with all the noise and the buzz and the atmosphere, awesome, do it. If you work in complete silence the best, like I do, perfect. That's where you need to work. You can crush it at 6 a.m. Wonderful. Absolutely. You found your flow. But we need to find what works best for us. So if you're struggling to find out what works best for you, let's talk about that, because I think, and we did a podcast a couple of episodes ago about trying differently, not trying harder, but trying differently. And we need to do that often. We need to try differently often. So let's knock out a few more common things that some of us with ADHD are challenged with. Number one is planning. So if you have trouble planning, try mind mapping, try a Kanban board, try a legal pad, a piece of paper, a notebook, Evernote, or try a Word doc. Find whatever works for you when it comes to planning. And again, find the best time of day or the atmosphere. Experiment. Maybe it's nighttime after dinner. Maybe it is that 6 a.m. Maybe it's after a good lunch. Whatever it is, experiment and find the time that's best for you to plan. Maybe it's Sunday night to get your week off on the right track. Whatever it is. Productivity. We talk about this all the time. Look at the times of day. Look at the working conditions. Look at the common distractions. Interruptions such as meetings. You know, for example, I don't really can get productive if I've got a meeting like right smack in the middle of the morning. It kind of just throws my day into a tailspin. So look at how you can construct your days, okay, and your working conditions, and minimize those distractions, whatever they may be. Outside distractions, hunger, YouTube, what have you, to make sure that you can be as productive as possible. You have to experiment and you have to be honest with yourself. Flow, which is my best friend. Okay. I've talked about this before. Okay. But what days do you work best? Okay. Sometimes for many of us, Mondays and Fridays aren't the best way to focus. Okay. We know it. We know it's the beginning of the week, and Friday, we know it's the end of the week. And we have that in our brain and we go, I just don't feel like working. Okay. Find the best days where you can get into flow. What are the hours? Find those best hours. We just mentioned that. But again, if you're going to get a lot of work done as a professional with ADHD, you've got to find a way to get into flow. So experiment. And can you block out entire days of the week? That is one of my best techniques, is blocking out entire days. No meetings, no phone calls. I save emails till late afternoon, whatever it may be. Okay. That's the way I get into flow. Let's talk about scheduling and commitments. What do you use for a schedule? How do you schedule? Do you claim your personal time first, which is something I'm really on a crusade about with the new book, Overcoming Burnout? Have you claimed your personal time first before you schedule other professional commitments? And do you have times of day that are better for meetings? Again, I like to push them off to late afternoon so I can actually get work done. Another thing with scheduling, do you just fill holes in your calendar, or do you actually have a strategy for maximizing your calendar? And do you color code? I have big green, I've mentioned this before, but big green blocks where it tells me that's my time. Okay. Do you control your schedule, or do you just let others do it? And what I mean by that is, do you have an appointment system such as Calendly or something else, where instead of letting people plug meetings and other commitments into your schedule, do you actually control it? And I think that's huge. That's important for productivity, for flow, for planning, and to minimize burnout. So make sure you are controlling your schedule. Time, big issue. Do you schedule commitments with reminders? Do you have a timer? Where is the timer? Is it on your phone? Or is it another form of timer, like those big things you can put on your desk? Is it a traditional clock? Have you tried the Pomodoro technique? Once again, that's one of those things where people say, oh, it doesn't work. Well, it works for some people, so don't discount it. All right. So the bottom line is, just because you saw something on Twitter from somebody else and they said that technique doesn't work, don't even bother. All right. You're not doing yourself a service by at least experimenting, because as you continue to experiment, you will continue to find ways to thrive with your ADHD, to be productive, to enjoy life, to enjoy your personal time, and to get more done and be a happy adult with ADHD. Remember this, we all have different brains, and I consider ADHD as a spectrum. So remember that, and try things that work for you and push off the things that don't. All right. As I always say, we'll see you next time.